got to tip things off here with the NBA playoffs and the NBA in general. And we've got a lot to discuss with the NBA. So we thought, let's switch things up a little bit and also introduce the newest member of the Empty the Bench podcast network. He's going to be starting a show. You've probably heard the show before. We've had him on in the past, but now it is coming to the Empty the Bench podcast network, the host of the 3ND. Let's welcome back to Game On, Paul Lombardi. Paul, welcome. How you doing?
I'm doing great, guys. How are you doing?
We're doing great. First and foremost, we want to congratulate you. You can see right there, he's good. We've had him on before, host of the 3D, which is a fantastic show, and I'm very excited to have it here. It is going to start up next Monday at 5 p.m. Eastern, and we will get to that and talk about that show in just a few minutes. But Paul, NBA playoffs, they have been unpredictable. This is so different. And, we were talking about this before we came on the air. This year has different than years past. Usually, the top seeds are the ones that get very, very far, the best teams because they have the best talent. But still here as of now in the conference finals, you've got a 7 seed out west and an 8 seed out east. I guess let's start out west now, just to let everybody know, the Lakers and Nuggets series could be over with this airs. But nevertheless, when you look at this Western Conference series here first, is this really a case more of the Lakers just falling apart, or the Nuggets, are they really that good?
Honestly, I think it's a mixture of both. I think that the Nuggets have always been very close, and the Jamal Murray injury has kind of sidelined them for the past couple of seasons. They finally got him back. Michael Porter Jr. was finally able to put in a full healthy season. And then Nikola Jokic obviously averaging a triple-double, just casually dropping 10 assists as a 7-footer like no one else can. I mean, they're built for this kind of situation. And I'm just glad that they honestly are pushing far. Obviously, over the last few years, they've gotten out early in the playoffs and haven't really advanced too far. But I think that they're all in. And I think it's a mixture of both, too, because I think that the Lakers are somewhat choking it, but in a way, you saw their team before the trade deadline. They definitely improved a little bit, bringing in D'Angelo Russell, bringing in Jared Vanderbilt, and a few pieces. But the entire team it's not an NBA championship team, and LeBron, the offense doesn't run through LeBron anymore. I think that's been pretty evident in these first 3 games. The offense kind of runs through Anthony Davis and Austin Reeves is what it mainly looks like. LeBron is definitely in the back end of his illustrious career, and I think it's the first time that we're kind of seeing him hit a decline, and Anthony Davis too with his health. I think the Nuggets are just a better team in my opinion, and I think that they're finally proving it.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I think Jokic is really having his moment to step up and shine for the first time, especially now that he's got a loaded team around him. And yeah, I think, Paul, you pretty much said it best. LeBron, even though you still see those moments where he'll put up vintage playoff LeBron performances, this definitely is a LeBron that we're seeing on the decline. And I think if you kind of have to rely on other guys as the stars for the Lakers, that's kind of a sign that they're on the decline. But you also have to give them credit where credit is due for being able to get further than a lot of people thought before the playoffs happened. However, with that being said, I think this very well might be Jokic's time to shine. And look, could he go on and win that title and that Denver has never seen before in the NBA? I don't know, but they are on the verge of making history because the Denver Nuggets have never reached an NBA Finals before. In fact, do you guys even know the last time the Nuggets made it to a conference finals?
Carmelo Anthony.
Bingo.
Back in 2008, I want to say.
09.
2009. Gotcha.
Yeah.
Yep,
that was when they got boat raced by the Lakers.
Yep, and that was like Carmelo's best moments too. That was the prime of his career right before he came over to the Knicks. Obviously, Carmelo announced his retirement today too, so it's good to mix him into the talk a little bit, especially with how much of a Nuggets legend he is. But I completely agree. I think that in some ways it was successful for the Lakers though. Being a play-in team, they're the first play-in team Them and the Miami Heat are the first playing teams to actually win a playoff series ever since they brought the rule in. There hasn't been a team to win a playoff series, and now obviously you guys. I mean, the Lakers probably aren't going to make the finals, but you got the Miami Heat who are on the verge of making it. I think that's definitely true. It can be argued both ways for sure.
Yeah, when I look at the Lakers and Nuggets series, I said on the show last week that as much as we talk about LeBron and Jokic, and there's no doubt about it, to me, the secondary players, and what I mean by that is the Lakers' Anthony Davis was probably the most inconsistent star that there is in the league this year, and we've seen that again in this postseason. He was going to be very important. And also on the Nuggets side, who's going to be that other person? Because Jamal Murray right now looks like he's like the Jamal Murray of the bubble series back in 2020. Which one of those, where are you going to get your secondary scoring from? And we've definitely seen that the Nuggets are getting from that. I mean, we saw Jokic not really even have his best game in game 3, his best moments in game 3, and yet they still found a way to win that game pretty decisively. So as much as we talk about the stars getting you this far along, your secondary players and your bench players and really your depth is just as important.
Oh, absolutely. It's the depth that's 100% has helped the Nuggets come along, because you've seen in seasons past, Jamal Murray's injuries and Michael Porter Jr.'s injuries, and a lot of series Jokic would be the only one that shows up. And now they have a much better all-around team. Bruce Brown is a good glue guy. You got Kentavious Caldwell-Pope too, who's playing against his old team. And Aaron Gordon too is kind of like a glossed over solid player as well. They're getting good production out of all of them, and I think that's like the biggest takeaway that has shown like their dominance so far is that Jokic has been great, but he doesn't have to be 90% of the team. He's got some good players around him that are starting to develop into like solid NBA players.
Yeah, absolutely. Hank, what were you saying? I'm sorry.
No, yeah, I think that's definitely a really good point. And yeah, Caldwell Pope's been another guy that's kind of been under the radar. Bruce Brown, I'm glad you brought that guy up. I mean, he has been averaging in the playoffs. Let me see here. Well, this year he has been averaging like 11.5 points and 3.4 assists. Pretty solid numbers right there. Definitely a solid role player for the Nuggets, so to speak. And Michael Porter Jr., another solid player on that squad. And I think definitely when it comes down to it, I think you can't really look at the Lakers as chokers, so to speak. However, if you want to talk about a choking team, I would say look at the team that's losing 3-0 on the other side in the Eastern Conference Finals. But Johnny, I'm sure we will discuss that team very, very soon. And boy, do I have a lot of words to say about the coach of the Celtics, Joe Mazzulla, because I don't know if you guys saw his press conference, but if you're a Celtics fan and you watch that, I would be livid if I were you. Yeah,
it's crazy because he definitely wasn't ready to become a head coach right away. I think he was Udoka's top guy, and he kind of moved up the ranks really quickly. I mean, he's a young dude. Like the report just came out today to put everything in perspective. When Jimmy Butler was at Marquette, they defeated West Virginia in the playoffs, and Joe Mazzulla was the starter for West Virginia at that time. So it really goes to show like how young he is. And obviously, he's playing up against Jimmy Butler, a guy who like he played against, is now coaching against. And he didn't have any NBA experience either, Mazzulla. So he kind of became a coach right after college. It's an interesting situation for sure.
That said, I also think as dominant or as horrible as the Celtics have played in this series, you also have to give credit to the Miami Heat where credit is due. And look, I stayed with family friends while I was in Boston over the past, I want to say, week and a half. And they were telling me that they were not looking forward to playing the Miami Heat. And a good reason for that would have to be the only Jimmy Buckets. And oh my gosh, like look at a lot of the point production that he's been getting, I would say he definitely may very well be the next number that gets retired by the Miami Heat when it's all said and done. I mean, he's carrying them just like he's done in years past too.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so switching over to that Heat-Celtics series, and we're talking with Paul Lombardi, host of the 3 which is going to start up on Monday, May 29th here on the Empty the Bench Podcast Network. Paul, this Heat-Celtics series, I got to tell you, when Hank and I were previewing it last week on the show, the key for me was, would they be able to stop Jayson Tatum? And if they were able to do that, then on the Celtics, you should deal with. See, it wasn't like it was a 1-star or a no-star situation like you had with, the Knicks or the Bucks with, Giannis. The Knicks didn't really have a star, as painful as me as a Knicks fan to say that. That's just the reality of it. But
Sure.
When you look at the Celtics, I mean, if Tatum doesn't have a good game, you've got Smart, you've got Brown. But what they've been able to do to shut out Jayson Tatum has been absolutely amazing. And you know what? Then also good, you have to give a ton of credit to Eric Spoelstra. We're talking about coaching, and Eric Spoelstra, what he's been able to do down there in Miami. To me, Paul, I said it on the show, and I've been saying this constantly. Miami's an 8 seed, in number only. This team is a real dangerous team. And I was fearful to play them as a Knicks fan, and they're showing it again here. I mean, again, like I said in the Lakers-Nuggets series, is this a combination of, is this more Miami or more on Boston side, or is this just a combination of both?
And that's exactly it. This is a team that was in the NBA Finals just 3 years ago, was the 1 seed in the East last season during the playoffs, and now kind of came in as a 7 and lost their first playing game, and they were on the brink of not even making it at all. They kind of underperformed in a lot of ways this season. Kyle Lowry was hurt for a while. Jimmy Butler was hurt for a bit. So they had an up and down, not a very impressive record. But you knew, they're fully healthy, and that team is scary for sure. And a lot of it goes down to Spoelstra, without a doubt, because you look at some of the guys that he turns into players. You got Gabe Vincent, who was a nobody from UC Santa Barbara. You got Max Strus, who was a very good college player. He played in the Big East, so I used to watch him a lot, DePaul. Great 3-point shooter, but he's turning into a great all-around player too. Duncan Robinson was playing D3 and then ended up switching to Michigan, and they turned him into a player, even though he hasn't really done a whole lot since then. It's just their coaching is fantastic. Their leadership is fantastic too. Jimmy Butler is arguably the best leader in the NBA, I think. Like, as far as star players go, he's in any conversation. I mean, like, the guy's a stud. Everybody on the team rides with him. He rides with them. Adebayo too, and even without Tyler Hero too, they've been able to do all of this, which is just when you watched how they played against the Knicks, it honestly does not surprise me how they're handling the Celtics.
Absolutely.
Yeah, no, for sure. And yeah, to piggyback on what you said, Johnny, do you remember what I said to you before the series, what the big difference could be between the Celtics and the Heat and winning and losing? I said head coaching could be the difference, and I think we've really seen over the years how great of a coach Eric Spoelstra is, for sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, so let's just say that it's trending towards that it's going to be a Nugget Heat final, which, of course, if you listened to me last week, I said it was going to be the total opposite. So, of course, but let's say it's going to be a Nugget Heat final, because it looks like it's going to be the case. What do you think about that as a possible finals matchup?
I think it's fantastic. I honestly think it's awesome. I think that's a series that can go either way too. That's like that. We have a potential of seeing a Game 7 in the NBA Finals, which is nothing better than that. I like that's exactly what I wanted. Like in the first round, I wanted to see the Nuggets, and I want to see Nuggets versus Knicks originally. But then when the Knicks were out, obviously, I swapped in the Heat because I can't root for the Celtics. But Nuggets versus Heat Finals. I mean, that's amazing, and it also shows the disparity that's in the NBA nowadays too, which I love. We're past the era of every single year it's Cavs versus Warriors, or the Warriors are always in it, or the Lakers are always in it, or the Spurs are always in it. Like, we're past that to the point where there's a lot of good teams, and the playoffs are a real dogfight to make it to the end. and you have a kind of a different finals every single year. I think it's great. I'm so excited. No matter who wins that series, I'd be content with seeing either of them win.
Honestly, just the fact that the Celtics are going to probably get knocked out is what makes me happy. I mean, look,
that's the sweet part about it.
Yeah, you guys know what I like to say. Friends don't let friends root for the Celtics. Well, friends also don't let friends root for either the Flyers or the Eagles, but that's a story for another day. But yeah, no, I definitely agree. I remember getting absolutely bored watching the NBA back when we were in college ball because I'm like, these games are so meaningless. You know it's going to be Cavaliers versus Warriors, but yet now you have teams doing well in the regular season. Now you're starting to see that the regular season in the NBA really doesn't mean that much. And it's starting to remind me, and I feel like I'm piggybacking off of Johnny when I say this, like the NHL playoffs in that sense. But in any event, really what it comes down to really is that it's the survival of the fittest. And yeah, I'm really looking forward to seeing a series between Jokic and Butler. And Paul, you know I'm a big fan of like your pyramid system for the NBA. In fact, I don't mean to sound biased when I say that, but you know I tend to view yours more favorably than a certain former ESPN employee who's like kind of a Celtics homer who has initials that I can't exactly repeat. But where do you think? I have a feeling you're going to upgrade either Butler or Jokic into your pyramid, regardless of how that series goes. No, and where do you have those guys? By the way, I don't know if you've since upgraded that piece since last we spoke about that. Which, by the way, that was like 2 or 3 years ago when you had me on that episode, and I gave you like my top 10 all-time list. That was a lot of fun.
Yeah, we put together a top 10 list for a little bit of context for anyone out there. Back during COVID, when everybody had so much time on our hands, I made my top 50 NBA players of all time. Kind of put together a big blog post for it, and me and Hank always go back and forth about where each player is ranked. And that obviously was back in 2020, so that was 3 years ago. So I didn't even have Giannis on it. Giannis is definitely on it now. Steph is further up on it. KD is probably a little further up on it. Jimmy Butler's arguably in it. I think Nikola Jokic definitely should be in it. I mean, 2-time MVP at this point. And if he wins a championship, he probably leaps into like the top 40, in my opinion. And Giannis, after winning that championship too, and he's got the 2 MVPs, he's probably somewhere in like the 20s or 30s. I mean, everybody's got different criteria for the top 50, but I think that if Jokic, the guy who can jump the most by winning a title would probably be Jokic because of the 2 MVPs. Jimmy Butler, I think if Jimmy Butler wins the NBA Finals, he more is establishing a Hall of Fame career rather than like a top 50 career. Like he's still a little bit of a ways to go since he doesn't have an MVP, but he's an amazing player. And even if he doesn't win the championship, win an NBA Finals, he probably ends up making it to the NBA Hall of Fame anyway.
Yeah, I would agree. I think those are all really good points. And I know you and I, like, as basketball I think you're more of the basketball historian than I am, but like you and I both can go on for days. I mean, look, we already did during COVID. I think during COVID, you and I talked like nonstop about basketball. You were probably one of many people that I just randomly went on and on because I was so bored, stuck in my house when I wasn't like playing whatever video games I had. But yeah, absolutely. I definitely agree with that. And that's the real reason that I really like the potential of the Nuggets Heat series. Because I'm always a big fan of those legacy storylines, and to go off at the risk of going off on a little tangent, that's why I really was fascinated by the Chiefs winning the Super Bowl, because it pretty much enhanced a lot of legacies. And again, I'm not saying that just to kiss your what, because you've got those Chiefs posters in the background. I'm like,
of course,
you know how I am with that stuff.
Yeah, no, exactly. It's like even if it's not your team, though, if it's a player that's likable that you like, it's nice to see them succeed and start to see like these star players build up big resumes for the Hall of Fame.
Mm-hmm.
100% agree with that. I like Jokic and I like Jimmy Butler too. I would love to see either of them win a ring because I think that would be awesome. I think it would further more push them into the Hall of Fame as guarantees. It's exactly likable players you like to see build it up. There's a lot of likable players that I never want to see win too. So I'll leave those nameless for the time being.
I think the only negative, though, all this great talk about the potential of the finals. The only negative could be we may be waiting over a week before the finals even starts because it's not till June 1st, and they're so strict on that. Oh, by the way, just to piggyback off that, see, I'm a Knicks fan. I'll be rooting for the Nuggets every day and twice on Sunday over the Miami Heat. I've always said the Miami Heat are one of the biggest rivals for the Knicks, and this goes back years. That's why when people are telling me about the Brooklyn Nets, the Nets are going to be the Knicks' biggest rival. That's silly. It's Miami, it's Boston, so that's what I would go at with that. So the finals, though, still possibly a little over a week away. But Paul, one of the things we've seen as a result of the NBA playoffs, this whole playoffs in general, have been all the coaching firings. We've had 3 coming off of eliminations. Mike Budenholtzer on the Bucks, Monty Williams on the Suns, and Doc Rivers of the 76ers. Now we heard a report from Woj on Monday about that the Bucks have been narrowing their coaching searches down to the likes of Nick Nurse and others. But when you look at all 3 of these guys, I mean, what were your thoughts about when they got fired and where the Bucks, the Suns, and the 76ers go from here?
It's crazy. There was a bunch of firings. I did not see those coming. I did not think that one quick elimination that the Bucks would let Bud go, and Monty Williams was really building up that team with the Suns too. He's been there the entire time. They've kind of taken that next step. So it was interesting to see him go, and Nick Nurse too. Nurse and Budenholzer are both NBA champion head coaches over the past 5-6 years. So I thought those were all interesting ones. The one that I didn't wasn't surprised about is the Doc Rivers one, because the 76ers underperformed again, and this is becoming like a routine for Doc Rivers too. If you ignore the 2008 finals with the big 3 in the Celtics, he's done this a lot. He has good teams, and he can get them to the second round of the playoffs, sometimes even the conference finals, but not anything further past that. So I think it's going to be interesting. The one that I'm most interested at, I think Budenholzer is going to get another job. I don't know if it's going to be this year. Monty Williams, to be honest with you, I wouldn't even be surprised if he kind of leaves coaching for a few years, because he's still owed $21 million from the Suns. He had all those issues with his family and stuff like that when he lost his wife and stuff. So I think he wants to stay close to his family and kind of do the family thing for the time being, and he's got plenty of money. So I could totally see him stepping away. And Nick Nurse, I 100% can see getting another job. The Bucks might end up hiring him. I think it might take Doc Rivers a little while to get another job. I don't see anybody hiring him right off the bat. I'm not too sure, but I'd be surprised if he gets a job this off season or next off season. He might have to be an assistant.
Yeah, I think Doc is going back into coaching. I think Doc's going to go into broadcasting somewhere, whether that's color commentating or maybe ESPN or NBA TV. The Monty Williams one, I don't think actually was really that much of a surprise, because what did the Suns have? New ownership. And maybe they want their own guys. So I think his own guy. And there was also a report from Woj that said that Ishbia and Monty Williams didn't really get along, so that wasn't really that much of a surprise. Woj also reported on Monday that the Bucks are narrowing their coaching search possibly down to Nick Nurse, Kenny Atkinson, and Adrian Griffin as possibilities there in Milwaukee. And that should be fascinating too, because Giannis, the rumors swirling about Giannis going to the Knicks or possibly leaving Milwaukee down the road too as possibility. But just amazing that you've had 3 coaches fired off of a playoff run. But where those 3 go, going to be very, very interesting.
Absolutely. I think the Kenny Atkinson one is a very interesting one to look at too. I feel like he does get a job. I mean, he got a job last year when he took the Hornets job, and then 5 days later he declined it and went back to being an assistant for Steve Kerr. So he was a very good coach. You know, the only reason why he left was because Kyrie ran him out of Brooklyn when him and Katie went there. But I think Kenny Atkinson is a guy to watch out for. I like that a lot. Adrian Griffin's an up and coming guy. I mean, Nick Nurse, you know what you're going to get with Nick Nurse. I think Nick Nurse is a very solid head coach, and I could see the Bucks deciding to hire him. I wouldn't be shocked about that.
Wouldn't it be kind of funny, though, if Nick Nurse somehow found his way there, especially after he beat Milwaukee to get to the finals? And I can see a lot of like trading places scenarios with a lot of these coaches. Like, imagine the Bucks hire Monty Williams, or Phoenix ends up getting Coach Bud. So
yeah,
that would really be interesting. But yeah, Doc, I wouldn't be surprised necessarily if he gets another coaching job, because if you look at what a lot of the players say about him, they love having him as a head coach, and a lot of them say he's a good leader. But yeah, I think, as you guys alluded to, the problem is he's had a bad track record in Game 7s, and actually, if you really look at his tenure with the Celtics, you could argue that even there he underachieved, because I know he had that title in 2008, but they probably should have won at least one more title with that core. At the very least, in 2009, 2010, they probably, maybe we talk a little bit differently about Doc Rivers should the Celtics hold on to that lead. But then there was also a few years later where they had a tough loss to Miami. But in any event, yeah, I think with the track record of losing in Game 7s, and I don't really know, but Coach Bud, Nick Nurse, those are guys who I can see getting hired, like probably tomorrow if possible. So yeah, it really just goes to show you that an NBA coach, probably past or present, most of them seem to have like 4 years as their expiration date. No?
Yeah, a lot of times. Yep, 3 or 4 years. And if there isn't, you know, there are very few that make it, you know, to close to 10 for sure.
Coach Pop is not only like the exception, he made it to, like, he's been the coach pretty much our entire life now of the Spurs.
Literally.
Yeah, I mean, the other thing, I guess, if you know, these are big names, but you know, you're a big college guy too. Is there anybody in the college ranks possibly that you see coming up?
Well, the one interesting one that I saw was Ed Cooley. He was Providence's head coach, and obviously just took the Georgetown job. I saw his name linked. I thought that would be insane if, like, he, you know, all the hoopla and stuff, him taking the Georgetown job and leaving Providence and stuff, he were to go to the NBA. But I think somebody like had some interest in him. As far as the others, I think Mike Woodson was had like some interest in him, but he's at his alma mater right now, and he's doing a great job recruiting. Like, I don't think he wants to. I think he's going to end his career at the college level. But Ed Cooley was an interesting one. That you know, I thought was kind of cool, kind of interesting situation. He could be an NBA coach one day. I would not be surprised.
Yeah, because you never know, there'll be another opening or not. We're talking with Paul Lombardi, host of the 3 and D here on Game On. Paul, you know, you had brought his name up earlier on in our conversation, but Carmelo Anthony announced his retirement on Monday. Great career. I mean, you know, I remember him from his time with the Knicks. You know, that intro when he got traded to the Knicks, still one of the best intros in NBA history. Yes, I will go to that extreme and say that.
I'm coming home.
Yes, the coming home to run this, from the transition from I'm coming home to run this town, was absolutely incredible. But, you know, Carmelo, I mean, what a career, right? I mean, there's not enough great things you could say about him. I mean, it's a bummer he couldn't win a championship, but, I mean, not enough great things could be said about him, too.
Absolutely, and he was a great Knick too. You know, as a diehard Knicks fan, as well. He, you know, we grew up. He was like the star of like my lifetime. You know, I grew up when I was a little kid. I was a big Stephon Marbury fan. So he was like my guy when I was like a little kid. And then Carmelo, you know, he made the Knicks relevant again. You know, we were 15 years or so of really not doing much. Probably was able to bring them back to the playoffs, won a playoff series. The only thing that stunk was the Pacers were a much better team with Paul George and Roy Hibbert and all those guys, and then you had the Heat with their big three that you were never going to be able to beat. It was next to impossible. So you knew that they were never going to make it to an NBA Finals, no matter how good they were during the season. But they were just a fun team to watch. And obviously, won a scoring title with the Knicks. I think he made 6 All-Star teams with the Knicks. Just an all-around great player. And there's definitely was a lot of talk today about if his number should hang in the rafters at MSG. I think it's, MSG does not just give those out. The only Knick who's up there that hasn't won a championship is Patrick Ewing. And Patrick Ewing is by far a Hall of Famer, but Carmelo Anthony is also going to be a Hall of Famer, but technically Carmelo played longer for the Nuggets than the Knicks too. So, but besides all of that, tremendous career, one of the best scorers that we've ever seen in our lifetime. I loved him as a Knick too. A lot of Knicks fans hated him. A lot of Knicks fans, had mixed opinions on him. I loved him. He was our guy. And part of the reason why I loved him was he was a star player that wanted to be on the Knicks. And being a Knicks fan, it was so frustrating watching, LeBron snub us and all those guys. And we actually had a star player that wanted to be a Knick and ended up signing 2 contracts with us. So I always liked Carmelo for that, and he was always very destined. If he's going to win, he wanted to win in New York too, which I thought was great.
And look, you mentioned him wanting to come to New York. Look, love Melo or hate Melo, and Paul, I think I wasn't really quite as big of a Carmelo fan as you were, but you and I can both agree on this. And Johnny, I don't want to sound like I'm speaking for you, but I think you might probably agree with me too. But love him or hate him, he was really the only star. Well, actually, no, that's not true. I would say Amari Stoudemire too, but other than Stoudemire, he was the only star that truly wanted to come to New York and take on the challenge of making the Knicks relevant. And look, I have been on record saying that there have been moments where he hasn't always been the best team player and he's probably taken more shots. But with that having been said, I am also going to be fair and say the Knicks kind of screwed Carmelo in a set to a certain degree, although they also didn't really help themselves when they gave up practically a good chunk of the roster when they traded for him in February of 2011. But having said that, though, Carmelo Anthony, 62 points at MSG. I remember that very well. What was that, 2014, I want to say?
Yeah.
The game against the Charlotte Bobcats.
13.
Yeah, against the Bobcats. I think it was 13. Yeah. It was during that 12-13 season that he won the scoring title. They won a playoff series. That was like a dream that season.
Yeah, that was the 54-win team back then. Yeah. And think about it. Now they're finally back to the good days. We keep talking about that year up until this past year with them.
I'm also going to play a little devil's advocate and say this. Yeah, I do agree that he's had moments where, you could maybe argue that he was responsible for the Linsanity being cut short with him getting D'Antoni fired and whatnot. But when you put him on a team with a lot of superstars, look at how much different he's been in the Olympics when compared to the NBA. And can I give you guys a fun fact? I believe Carmelo Anthony actually is the leading point scorer for the USA men's Olympic basketball team.
I'm pretty sure he played for 4 Olympic games, I think. 3
gold medals too.
Yeah. I would push back a little bit on the Linsanity thing, but
mention he also what he did with Syracuse kind of should be mentioned too, since I believe that was the only championship team Syracuse ever had. And I'm kind of going to talk a little bit about a closer time that Syracuse came close to win a championship. And Johnny, you might have an idea what I'm talking about, but that'll be more for when we talk about a certain NFL legend's passing.
Absolutely. And we will get to that in just a little bit. We're talking with Paul Lombardi here on the show. Paul, one of the other great things, and I follow your content a lot and person, and you've got the draft coming up here in about another month or so. And the big story, that came out this past week was the draft lottery. And, because we've got one of the biggest, hyped prospects, and I'll get to him in just a second here, in Wembanyama coming up. But the big thing with this draft lottery was the worst record this past season, and they ended up with the 5th pick. And who gets the number 1 overall pick? The San Antonio Spurs. So here are the Spurs, who had maybe the most consistent 20-year run that we've seen, not only in NBA history, but in almost all of sports. And now they end up with the number 1 overall pick to draft Victor Wembanyama. And we all know how they've done with international talent with Tony Parker and Manu Ginobili as of late. But I mean, what does this do for the Spurs if we assume they're going to draft Wembanyama number 1 overall?
It really is crazy that, they ended up with the first overall pick. I had a feeling it was going to happen because it's just the Spurs' luck. And, it was almost like a perfect storyline. You have Greg Popovich towards the end of his career, and you have this incredible French guy who everyone thinks is the next big thing. And, of course, he goes towards his team. So I think it was literally best case scenario for Victor, and I think it was obviously best case scenario for the NBA too, because he's playing for a popular franchise. He's not going to play 4 or 5 years of his rookie deal for the Orlando Magic or the Detroit Pistons, where they're not going to compete or anything like that. Not saying the Spurs are really ready to compete right now, even if you just add Wembanyama to that bunch, but he's an extreme difference maker, and he's got the potential, obviously, to be the biggest NBA talent since LeBron James was coming out of high school. That's what everybody expects. I think it's a lot of pressure to put on the kid, but he does deserve that praise. With everything that he does, he's a stud. He just literally does everything. 7'4", he can handle the ball, he can shoot. Incredible rim protector, great defender, quick hands. He's literally the perfect player. But as for the Spurs, I think it's still going to take some time. I don't see them as adding Wembanyama as becoming a playoff team this year, especially in the West. They might get close to, maybe that 10 seed to possibly be a play-in, but I still think that they're a few pieces away. But if they have a couple bad seasons, get a couple more lottery picks, they might have another perennial winner very soon.
By the way, so here's an interesting little fun fact for you guys. You know who the last number 1 pick that the San Antonio Spurs had was?
Yep.
That would be none other than Tim Duncan, who I believe is in both of our top 10s on our pyramid, Paul, if I remember correctly.
Absolutely.
I don't remember where exactly he was on yours, but on mine, I think he's either 5 or 6. I can't exactly remember. But in any event, the last time the Spurs had the number 1 pick, they also went 22 consecutive years without missing the playoffs. Don't know if that's exactly going to happen this time around, but with that having been said, Coach Pop has seemed to have a knack for doing well with coaching big men, so I can definitely see him thriving in that environment for the San Antonio Spurs. And look, I don't know how long he's going to have left coaching San Antonio, but I think that should definitely leave an impact for that young kid. And I think it's definitely, and yeah, I think like you said, it's definitely better having him with the Spurs than say so many other organizations that have developed talent, but then somehow found a way to get rid of them. And funny you should say the Orlando Magic, because I'm pretty sure that they're the kings of developing talent and then getting rid of them after 4 or 5 years.
Absolutely.
Well, I'll tell you some of the great content and stuff that you could check out with Paul on the 3&D, which is now going to be on the Empty the Bench podcast network, premiering next Monday, 5 p.m. Eastern. So, Paul, what do folks have to look forward to for you starting over here next week?
Well, first off, I want to thank you guys for bringing me on to the Empty the Bench network. Just trying to revive the 3&D, and now we're back. Got a lot planned. We got plenty of college basketball content. We're going to have plenty of NBA content, especially with the NBA draft coming up, the NBA finals coming up. We're going to try to get some good interviews and get some good insights on all that stuff. I'm a diehard NBA fan, diehard college basketball fan, diehard NBA draft fan too. So if you're looking for any content in the basketball world, it's going to be the place to come to, is the 3 and D, for without a doubt. I'm looking forward to it. It's never an off season for basketball either. We always got the transfer portal. We got plenty of stuff going on, and then a few months away, we'll be back in the beginning of the season. So I'm looking forward to that. We're going to definitely have a lot of good things coming up, and definitely provide a lot of content here for ETB.
Awesome, Paul. I've watched your show before, and it's one of my favorites. I have to say that, and I'm really looking forward to it. You will be preceding us. You'll be on Mondays. We'll be on Tuesdays. And like you said, basketball, there really is no off season, because once you even get through the draft, and you have the summer league, and then before you know, you got preseason, and you may have a couple of weeks in the summer to just relax, but then you also got college hoops too, and there's so much. I'll tell you what, like in college basketball next season, the big topic is going to be St. John's with Rick Pitino going over there. So you're gonna have a lot of stuff going on for sure, and we're definitely looking forward to it. Again, congratulations, welcome. We'll check out your show next Monday, and we'll definitely have you back again down the road. Paul, congratulations again, and we'll look forward to catching you next week.
Thank you, guys. Can't wait.